On last week's video, we looked at a cavalry chest by the Army and Navy store. A very popular design of campaign chest when it was first made and still true today. And interesting as well because it had a secret drawer. This is a mahogany campaign chest around about 1900 date by Hill Millard. Very good company, Hill Millard. And it's also got secret drawers to the secretaire. How do we know it's by Hill Millard? Well, a couple of ways. First of all, by the interior of the secretaire. This is very distinctively Hill Millard. We've seen this design lots of times before. And normally these Hill Millard secretaires will have a little engraved plaque just here by the lock, or perhaps here to the top of this drawer, giving the name Hill Millard, 7 Duncannon Street, and patented 1873. That was when they came up with this design for this interior. So that's the first thing which tells us that it's Hill Millard. But of course, this one doesn't have a plaque. It's a later model. It's around about 1900. But it does have a stencil to the top of the bottom half, and it is just here. Now you won't be able to see that, but if you look on the screen, there's a photograph showing the detail of that. So that confirms that it's Hill Millard to us. So the secret drawer, I mean, that's what everyone's interested. Of course, why wouldn't you be? It's a very clever mechanism because it's got 2 levels of security. Underneath this drawer, you have got a button which releases it. But you can't just press that button to get into it. First of all, you've got to come to this side drawer, and there is a slide just in here which locks that button. So you've got to slide it away from the central section, and then that allows you to put your hand in here, and you can feel a circular button. You press it, and there you go, that pops out. So the drawer slides out, and then this stationary rack lifts up, and underneath you've got 2 velvet lined drawers. Why are they velvet lined? Well, presumably you've got something valuable in there, so it'll give that a level of protection. But also, if a chest is being carried or moved around by someone, they're hopefully not going to hear the contents rattling inside, which will give a clue as to the fact that there might be something valuable hidden in there. Now, if we press this button again, we can pull this secret drawer all the way out. And although it doesn't lead us to any further secret drawers, it does allow us to see how the rack works. And you can see that you've got these brass plates here with a hole which take the little button which is released, drops in there to lock it. So to put the rack back, we've got to raise the button by pressing the secret catch again so that it will slide in. The second one, we don't need to press the button because you've got this sloped area to the brass which, as you push it in, pushes the button up to lock it. And you probably heard the click as it did it. Let's just do that one more time. So there you can hear the pressure. Now you might have noticed that in the secret drawer there were a number of little business cards. And hopefully you can see that there. That's a card for Lieutenant Colonel C.F. Hunter, 4th Royal Irish Dragoon Guards, and also the Army and Navy Club. That's Charles Finlay's son Hunter, rather. And he joined the Royal Irish Guards as a 19-year-old in 1899. Now that ties in really with the date of his chest. And it shows us that it was made after the partnership of Hill Millard had been dissolved. They're a very interesting company, Hill Millard. You can read lots about them on our website under the Makers section. But basically, to give them a quick summary, Richard Millard first started working for that other well-known company, J.W. Allen of the Strand. And from quite a young age, he was born in 1795. And he was so good at his job that he even had patents under his name, but carried out when he was working for Allen. Henry Hill was a tailor in Old Bond Street, and he approached Millard and convinced him to join him in setting up Hill Millard to leave W. Allen. And they did this in 1854. Well, Henry Hill still carried on his business as a military tailor in Old Bond Street, and that was quite successful as well. I believe there was about 100 people working for the company. Henry Hill also went on to form quite an important art collection. He was buying Monets and Degas when the paintings were first produced by the artists. So he was quite an astute, clever man. But they eventually fell out in round about 1870. Richard Millard was a driving force behind Hill Millard. He did most of the work. Henry was probably preoccupied with his tailoring business, which was also successful. But they had brought in Henry's brother William 3 years after they started as a silent partner. But William was a drunk. He was taking a lot of money from the business of Hill Millard without really being able to show what he was using it for. And Richard Millard got fed up with this. So he said to Henry, right, that's it, we're finishing the business. Henry managed to persuade him to carry on if William retired from the business. So he did this. But by 1854, he'd still had enough. There'd always been problems over the lease. It was taken out by Henry Hill, first of all. He refused to show Richard Millard the details, even though Richard Millard wanted them to be joint leaseholders. Henry wangled it so they weren't. So they decided they would carry on the business until the lease expired, as Henry said, in July 1854. It actually was due to expire in December 1854. Well, maybe Richard Millard got wise to this. He went to the landlord and he extended the lease for 21 years in his own name so that he could dissolve the business. This went to a court case. Henry took him to court and they went to and fro. Eventually the business got dissolved, but Richard Millard had to pay Henry out, and he paid him £5,000 at the time, which was an awful lot of money. In today's money, that would be close to $500,000. So that also gives you a measure of how successful the business was. They were doing very well, and they were exceptional campaign furniture makers, as well as makers of leather luggage and all of those smaller items aside. So this chest was made after the partnership finished. For a while, Richard Millard traded under the name solely of Richard Millard. But in 1886, he died. Henry Hill had died 4 years before. What happened to the business after that point, we don't know. We don't know if Richard Millard had relatives who carried on the business. Remember, the lease he took out was for 21 years. In 1875. So that was good until 1896. So there was still a few years to run after he died. Maybe relatives carried on the business. Maybe it was sold. But the name Hill and Millard returned. More research is needed on that. We're not quite sure what happened. Sold to another person, perhaps, or perhaps relatives of the two, Hill and Millard, came together and carried on the business. The quality of the cabinet making and the work is just as good as the earlier chests. It's a very well made campaign chest. So presumably still the same cabinet makers were still working. We can see that the drawers are lined in ash, very good quality dovetails, quadrants to the inside, etc., etc. Everything that you would expect from a good English campaign chest. But you might say, well, those business cards being in the chest are not proof that it belonged to Lieutenant Colonel Hunter. Well, the fact that they were found hidden behind the drawers, they'd obviously dropped down there and escaped, and there were several of them, suggests to me that it did belong to him. But if you wanted more proof, you have got a depository label here from when the chest was obviously moved, and that has got Hunter's name on it as well. Hunter had quite a good career in the army. He was posted to India several times. That's where he met his wife. Perhaps he bought this chest to take to India. It would certainly tie in with the dates of the chest. But from his dates and from the later Hill and Millard stencil, I think we can date this chest to around about 1900. It's a typical campaign chest in its form. Good brass strap work, flush handles, splits in half, removable legs, etc., etc. A very good chest from a very good maker with a very interesting double lock system for the secretaire drawer. And the secret drawers hidden by it.